Let's do it.
What's going on? What's going on, good people? So we got another one back here with you this evening, and we got a special guest, none other than the Dr. Shaddox from Turfgrass Epistemology. How you doing there, Doc? How's it going?
I'm good. You think I'm special? I think you guys are special.
Man, we got we got the none other than the Doc in the house tonight. Yeah, no, man, we definitely appreciate you joining, and definitely consistent viewers and watching of the channel. Not only the channel, the information that you're putting out, definitely value added to the community. So again, appreciate you being on. Appreciate what you do over at the channel. So we'll go ahead and give you a plug real quick. If you are not subscribing, go over there on to the channel with the Doc. He's at Turfgrass Epistemology. Again, we'll give him a chance to explain what he's got going on his channel and a little intro. So we'll start it with you, Doc, and then we'll check in with you, Turf, and see where you at.
Well, thanks. Well, you all both know that you're partially responsible for Turfgrass Epistemology. You do realize that. Yeah, you all had. You were the second show I was on after the
we were that
factory.
bad.
I'm like,
He was like, I need to go do something better than that.
no, I was like, no, it was really creative, and I was like, man, I want to do more of that. And I reached out. I guess it was to Rob. I don't remember who I reached out to first, but
it was me.
And you guys invited me on. I'm like, man, and then I did it. I'm like, man, that was a lot of fun. It's meeting people where they are, right? So in science, we're in the lab or with students, or all that's very important. But a lot of the end users are on YouTube and TikTok or wherever else. And to have that ability to go on and meet people where they are, I don't know, I got a little taste of it, and I like that a lot. And so yeah, I blame you all. I give you guys all the credit if it's a positive thing. And if it's a negative, then I'll take the blame, I guess. But no, you guys played a role in my development. So thank you very much for having me on early on. That's just what, 3 years ago, I guess it was. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
You're a vet now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I got to claim that. At some point, I think someone's going to call me out.
Tried and true.
Yeah, but I still make mistakes a lot on air, right? And I think eventually someone's going to go, okay, you can't keep blaming it on you don't know what you're doing anymore. But I just some things just sometimes go wrong, and I'm a one-man show, so it's like, yeah. But no, I kind of got it figured out to some degree, I guess. But yeah,
technology always throw you a curveball. Just when you think you got it figured out, something will be like, what? Like I did the same thing I did the last time. Why is it not working?
Yeah,
that's like.
Well, you're asking
kids.
what is going on what's going on with Turfgrass? Like, I'm actually building a new studio, and it'll be done probably in April or May. But I want to be able to show or demonstrate things live with like a vertical camera pointing down, and I want to be able to show different things with fertilizers, and then I want to be able to write out things by hand. Like just the other day, I did a show about, and there's something to do with calcium carbonate, and I wanted to write out I wanted to show people what I was talking about, but I can't do it. I don't have the ability to do that. So I'm building a new studio that hopefully will be a little bit more, modern and a little bit future-proof in terms of what I'm interested in pursuing on the show. And not only that, also on just educational purposes and stuff, being able to have more flexibility and ability to do things science-wise and demonstration-wise. Yeah.
Could we see some future whiteboard talks with Doc?
Well, yeah, well, not so well. I mean, a little bit like that. Like, for example, to show the uselessness of things like iron sulfate, you can do that in like 15, 20 minutes by just putting some iron. For those of you who might not know, iron sulfate's usually granular, applied in some granular fertilizer. And it's soluble, and people use it thinking that it's going to green the grass up, but I argue that it's oxidizing out rapidly. Well, I can show that on air in just 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't take long, but I don't have the ability to actually show it. So it's just stuff like that, not so much whiteboard stuff, but like physical demonstrations of maybe say movement of water in soils using a wetting agent versus not using a wetting agent, the oxidation of manganese, oxidation of iron. Yeah, stuff like that can be easily done. I just need the set it. I need to have it set up, and so that's what I'm doing for the show the last maybe month or two. Yeah, so maybe July or August I'll have it done and flip it over to the new studio and try to do some more interactive things like that. Yeah,
that's nice. That's a whole different ball game to the community, to be honest with you. To be able to bring it live demonstrations, live experiments. I think that'd be nice. I'd be tuned in for sure. Not that I'm not already.
Well, you know that there's an old video of water movement everybody's seen in soils. And what I like, it's from like Washington State back in the 70s or something. And it shows water movement down in soils. But what I like about that video is on YouTube now. I used to watch it on VHS tape when I was a student, right? But now on YouTube, you can slide the speed forward and backwards, and you can really see the water moving, And I'm envisioning something like that, like to show the water penetration of the soil, or to show the oxidation of iron on, say, a driveway paver or something like that. And for someone to be able to just do that live and then move the speed, and you can see how rapidly that iron moves out and oxidizes. And there's just all sorts of things like that. I think that I can pursue. I think people would get a lot out of real practical information that they can. It might sneak home into a different audience, being able to show things like that on air. So anyway,
visual learners that's a real thing. People that need the visual indication of what it is you're speaking about. I know for me, I do better with demonstrations. So like if you demonstrate it to me versus me reading it, it's going to lock so much quicker. Now I combine the demonstration with me reading it, and now I'm good to go. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, I hope, things that I come up with, half of them succeed and half of them just completely fail. It's just embarrassing when they fail. But, the half that succeeded, it's things that succeeded that wouldn't have occurred if I hadn't tried. So I'll give it a shot and we'll see what happens.
All right.
Yeah. What else I saw? I've seen someone do something similar to what you're talking about, where they put, somehow they linked their iPad or something to the stream, and they could show their iPad screen. So they were writing stuff out, and then I could see it on that sounds like something that you might be interested in. So while you're rebuilding the new studio, definitely look into that, because that was pretty cool. I think it was it was Tax Alchemy. That's who it is, which very close kind of Tax Alchemy. He had this video, this guy, he's a tax strategy specialist, and he had this video where he was writing stuff out, trying to explain it, and I just thought it was really cool. I was like, dang, how do you do that?
Yeah,
it's really cool. So it's possible. Well, I don't know how he did it, but it's possible.
Yeah, but that's where I get a lot of stuff. Like I do these little short videos, and these little what do you call them, the words pop up on the screen or whatever. And I was obsessed with trying to figure out how to do that. Yeah. You know who told me how to do it? Cam showed me how to do it. I was like, you got to help me with this. I got to figure out how you're doing this. Because he had these videos on, I don't know if you still do them, Cam, or not, but he had these videos. I'm like, man, that is really creative. It's just 30 seconds, whatever, and you can see the words. And I struggled and tried to find, and he sent me an email. I was like, you just tried this. I think it's like Opus Pro, Opus Clips or whatever. And I'm like, Opus finally. Yeah. And so we learn from each other, and I'm learning from you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we do it. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, there's no gatekeeping on this side. Like whatever information we've got, if the community wants to know, we don't hide products. There's not anything that we're using. No special water that we're using or anything else. It's like, hey, this is what it is. Follow the science. And also, if there's stuff that we're doing from an editing perspective or performance, hey, ask away. And hey, if I know the answer, I'll let you know. If not, I was like, I don't know about that. So Turf, let's check in with you. What you got going on, my brother? What's happening? And I know y'all down there in South Carolina. Y'all about to get going. I've been saying
everything's waking up.
You was out there sweating the other day.
Yeah. Everything's waking up. It's warming up. We had a couple cool days. So to us, it felt like winter came back for a little while, but My iron cutter yards, they're ready for scalps. They're fully green. They're the greenest thing on the block. Like everybody else is still trying to wake up, and that
Yes,
iron cutter
sir.
is running already,
That
fully
that
green.
that good
Um,
iron cutter.
yeah.
Both of you
So I
have
was just
Bermuda?
waiting for this. Well, yeah, we do now.
Oh, you do?
But
Okay.
Camp has
I
Camp
didn't
has
know.
Bermuda and cool season up there in Maryland,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
my main yard is Bermuda, and then most of my clients' yards they're mixed of like common and centipede. That's normal out here in
Oh.
this area. Common and centipede. I got a couple zoysia yards, and then I have a
Mm.
really nice hybrid Bermuda commercial property that I'm gonna be doing some pretty cool stuff over there. I locked in the client for a whole year, and we're
Okay,
gonna do
good.
something special over there. I'm looking forward to that. I'll be real mowing his outside. So he has like this outside beer garden per se kind of situation. Families come out
Mm.
there during the summer. They sit down, they play cornhole and stuff like that. So I'm really about to take that property and just like elevate it. But pun intended.
Pun
But
intended. Yeah.
but yeah, we're yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So right now, next up, now that this weather is past, we're looking at scalping. We're looking at some top dressing and just getting those lawns reset, those high maintenance uh signature turf programs that I have on my books right now. So other than that, man, it's just trying to be a dad, trying to be a husband. It's taxing, man. It's taxing.
Who you
But
telling? Who you telling?
what you got going on, Camp?
Man, it is like we are starting to green up. Like I put it on my stories today when I was kind of promoting the live here, but we are greening up. Like it's finally at a point where I'm like, all right, I can see it. Like I can see the green up happening. I can see it starting to grow. Uh, we were we had a cold dip. Like we dropped back down and got more snow and all of that when we thought we were having our part of our fake spring. But at this point, I think should be after we get through this week and then like mid next week. I think we're gonna get going at that point. So I'll probably get my first mow. I think last year I mowed my first mow was like the first weekend in April, and right now I'm probably tracking to be right around that same period of time, for it to be first week of April to really get that first mow in. So other than that, man, we trying to enjoy the time off while I can, because once you get that first mow in, it's over. It's over after that.
To the races.
It is over.
You cut with the real mower too, Cam? Is everything real mode?
It is not. So my Bermuda is gonna be real mode. So I got a little small Bermuda area, that's gonna be real mode. But the rest of my yard, I cut it with a E-Time Master, from Toro. They're 30-inch. Cut it probably about 2 inches on my cool season. I'm trying to get my Bermuda sub. It'll be sub 1 inch this year. So that's probably where I'm gonna keep it. I've got a Hudson Star real mower. Shout out to Hudson. That I'm gonna keep on that all season.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, good. Nice.
yeah. Other than that, I mean, I think that covers us from a weather perspective and what we got going on in the yards and everything. So I think we good there. We're gonna go ahead and move on to the next segment of, hey, when do we get ready to start fertilizing? So I think that's a topic that a lot of people have right now. They're trying to understand, should I be out fertilizing? When's the right time to do it? And then we'll get into, hey, what fertilizer should you be using to be able to get the most bang for your buck when you're out in the yard. So first up, Doc, what do you think? Like from your perspective, when's the right time to get out to start your fertilization? We can start with cool season. I think you're mostly cool season lawn right now in Kentucky. So we'll start there talking cool season wise.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we can. It's cool. It's the I don't know, threshold that I use is the same for cool season or warm season, so it should be useful for anybody. But we can talk just cool season if you want to. But on my end, or my position on this, is let's first start with the criteria or the setting where you know you don't want to fertilize, and that is to non-actively growing turf grass. So if it's not actively growing, you shouldn't be out there throwing anything on there. Nitrogen and phosphorus, particularly those two. Even potassium in the fall is probably a no-no in most cases, but it's not going to take it up if it's not actively growing. So let's just think about this from a plant physiological perspective first. That plant, when I mean actively growing, I mean cell division or cell elongation. If it's not elongating the cells or dividing the cells, then it's not imbibing water through the roots. There's no transpiration through the plant, and there's no nutrient uptake. So if it's not actively growing, don't fertilize, period. I don't care if it's cool season or warm season. So if you can think about that, you're going to go, okay, well, I get that. We're not going to fertilize in December if it's cool season, or maybe January when it's cool season, maybe February when it's cool season. We're not going to fertilize warm season. At least we're talking Northern Hemisphere here. We're not going to fertilize warm season probably in December, January, February either. So those months are to some degree the same among cool and warm season grasses. Right. The issue comes, well, when do these grasses start to come out of dormancy? That's going to vary greatly between warm season and cool season, and it'll even vary within the warm season and cool season species. So, for example, there's Bermuda grasses that will come out of dormancy and start growing earlier, sometimes 3 or 4 weeks earlier than other cultivars of the same species, being Bermuda grass. So it's hard to say you're going to start fertilizing on March 1 or April 1 or May 1. But instead, if you just use the basic concept, if you're not going to go to the extension office, if you go to the extension office and see what their calendars are, okay, the calendars are going to be in the ballpark. But if you're not going to do that, instead think about it like this. Well, how do I know if it's actively growing? Well, step one, are you mowing the grass yet?
Yeah.
If you ain't mowing,
it's a good place to start.
Then you shouldn't be throwing, basically. Yep. So the next question then becomes, and this is where it becomes a little bit moot, and that is, well, okay, I've cut my lawn, but it's still, I mean, normally during the season I'm cutting it once a week, but it's been like 2 weeks. Maybe I need to cut it again. Maybe it's not really growing that much. So that's when it becomes, okay, well, we're going to split hairs to some degree. So, but if we can agree, you probably shouldn't be throwing it at all until you've at least cut it once. Okay. Once you cut it, then we can start, splitting hairs if you want to. So whether it's warm season, whether it's Bermuda, whether it's, 419, or whether it's Tiff Tough, or whether it's Latitude or Tahoma, whatever, these all come out of dormancy at different times. Just use the same concept. Well, I haven't cut it yet. Well, then don't fertilize it yet. Okay. When you've cut it and then you've cut it again, probably you should be thinking of fertilizing here pretty quick if you really want to have a high if your expectations are quite high. And you can use the same concept with cool season, Cam and Rob. So, right now I have a robot on my lawn. I cut it once, maybe a week or two ago, and then it snowed. And then I cut it again just today. And today I cut it, and that thing was struggling. It was like, and he was cut. I was like, oh man, and I cut it at 3 inches. So now it's pretty much for me, it's like sometime very, very soon. Yeah, very, very soon. In fact, I actually had some research material that I had left over, and I kind of just put some out on some other parts of my yard. But when I have a project going on that is representative of what we would do in reality, that project, I'm not going to fertilize until I would say go. And I'm looking at the temperature, I'm looking at the calendar, I'm looking at the light, and looking at all these things, and looking at the growth of the plant. And right now is like anytime in the next week or two, I'm going to initiate the next year of that study, which is a nutrient study. So that's the way I would use it. That's the concept I would use. And that's the same thing going into dormancy. If you're cool season, at least in Lexington, Kentucky, if you're cool season grasses and you're going to say late July, early August, it is slowing way, way down, probably even a little bit before that because it's so hot. And then it's going to start coming out in late August or early September. So again, use that same concept. If you're mowing it weekly and you have a high expectation of quality, then that would be an indicator to go ahead and start fertilizing. That's my take. What are y'all's thoughts on it?
Exactly that. that is exactly what we've been saying. That's exactly my take on it. And I like the part where you said, if you've cut it again, Like that first mow is kind of like what we call like that charity mow. Like yeah, it might have grew a little bit. You might have a little bit. You kind of snip some of the tips off of it, but typically by that second mow, you get you've got some good growth in that. That first one, charity mow, you kind of get it stimulated to get some growth going. Normally by that second mow, it's probably growing a good amount at that point. Of course, depending on what your soil temps have done in between in between those periods of time. But typically, by the time if you've got to cut it again, that second time is probably about ready for some feeding.
Yeah, and I probably should have prefaced all that by saying it really depends on your expectations too. So I don't have a high expectation for my lawn. I think people who watch my channel know that. I just want a lawn I can go out and play in and throw the baseball with my daughter in and just goof around on. But if you're, so I don't have a very, very high expectation. So if you have higher expectations, then you'd still want to follow the same concept, but you might be applying fertilizer at a different rate or more frequently or whatever the case is. If you have lower expectations, there's no requirement that you go out and fertilize now. I mean, if you're just like, I don't particularly care, it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other, then you don't have to fertilize. If you don't care what your lawn looks like, then don't fertilize. So I'm not saying you need to go do this. I'm saying that if your expectations are high, then it's very unlikely that those are going to be met without applying supplemental nitrogen.
Yep. Agreed. From a cool season or a warm season perspective, like you've got to get that green up first, like and just going out fertilizing. I've seen people scalping back Bermuda lawns that have zero green in them, and applying fertilizer right alongside of it when you're scalping it back. And my eyes, I'm like, what are you fertilizing? Like it is.
Exactly.
That nutrient uptake, that nutrient uptake is not there, like not there at all.
And in the argument, if you listen to the other side of the argument is, well, if it's all slow release, then we can go ahead and do it, and it's not going to release until the plant needs it. Or if it's all organic, it's not going to release, or it's going to feed the microbes, or all this other stuff. Those are pretty bad arguments, and the reason is that the concept of applying fertilizer to a plant that cannot physically take it up in any way at that moment just flies in the face of science. So for example, let's say it's all slower. Let's say it's all polymer coated urea that you apply, and you're still going to follow my recommendation where you're going to wait until you've maybe got a second cut on it. It's kind of growing. It's only going to take a week or two for that fertilizer to start to release, and it's going to start really, really growing. I mean, it's going to, versus the opposite where you apply it, say, a week or two early, or maybe you missed it and you thought it was going to ready to go and it's a month early. Now that fertilizer's sitting there, your money is sitting there wasting. Some of it's volatilizing, some of it might be leaching. It's unlikely it's going to leach, but it could. Some of it could get washed off, and you see these little prills going down the water, the road, and it's just an incredibly negative connotation to our industry. It's a loss of revenue. It's a loss of money in terms of you're not getting much in return for the money that you spent, and it increases environmental risk unnecessarily. So it's still, even in the case of slow release materials, I just don't see a good argument to do it when the turfgrass is not actively growing. It's just, I haven't seen a good argument yet where I go, you know what, go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Even when it's slow release doesn't mean no release, right? I mean,
exactly.
It's not gonna not release because the grass isn't growing. So if you're that early with it and the plant's not able to take it up, you've lost a portion, some portion of what the nutrients that you plan to get into the plant is not going to, because the plant wasn't taking it up.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just the risk of offsite movement is incredibly high when the turfgrass isn't thick and dense and growing. I have photos of polymer coated urea all over cart paths where they applied it and the rain came in and they just floated down the hill, and it's all over the cart path or in the culvert of the road where it just washed off. And there's a risk there. There's always a risk there. I'm just saying the risk is much, much higher to not a turf grass that's not actively growing. So let's wait until it's actively growing. We can put it out. And if you do it following best management practices, would be applying to actively growing turf, following the correct rates. The risk is so low, it's essentially equivalent to background levels of nitrogen offsite movement. It's just incredibly low if you follow those best management practices. It's when you don't that people take a picture and put it in the newspaper or put it on Twitter, or the elected official shows it puts it on a billboard at the meeting. And so we want to try to minimize that as much as we can. Yeah.
And now you're trying to fight that story of improper use of fertilization and all of that. Yeah.
I had a meeting today with another peer of mine who specializes in the same thing I specialize in. And I told her, I said, I wish somehow we could get all these movers and shakers in a room and show everybody in the turf industry how hard it is to get nitrogen to leach through actively growing turf grass. It is really, really difficult. You have to do it on sands with high amount of irrigation, high amounts of nitrogen. You just have to do a lot of really silly things. So, it's not really a concern as long as you're following BMPs, as long as you're following the recommendations from your land-grant institution. It's you're very, very safe. Just do that and you're safe. Don't do that, and that's when problems have come up. Okay?
Yeah. So appreciate that. So out there for the community, that was a big one, right? We're in that point in the season where different, depending on where you're located within the nation and what zone you're in, you may be at a different point. But the key here is when you should be fertilizing. If you're not actively growing, and I've said it now, Doc has now confirmed it, between that second mow, that second or third mow, you've got active growth at that point. That's a key sign. We're not getting real scientific with it. When you've cut twice. That's a simple that's a simple way to put it. Yep, I've got two. Typically, I'd say if you got 2 to 3 mows on it, you're in the good to be able to go ahead and get your fertilizer down. So
I say you're very safe. You're very safe following that recommendation, and not following it, you're still probably kind of safe environmentally if you don't follow it, but it's just unnecessary risk. Why do it? So let's just stay within the safety zone of the BMPs, and God forbid something happens, you can come back and say, well, I'm following BMPs. If you can, and I think there's some safety in that. And
then too,
second or third mow, you're good to go.
And then too, it protects your wallet a little bit. We're gonna point this thing back to your wallet a couple of times throughout this live. So here's point number 1 back to your wallet. If it's not actively growing, it's not actively taking up the nutrients that you're putting down. Therefore, some of them coins that you spent on that fertilizer is not going into the plant where you want to get the result of you spending your money.
Yeah, the plant, and this is an analogy, but it's essentially a literal analogy. It's literally the exact same thing. The plant is essentially a straw, and if you envision a straw putting in a glass of water, the plant transpires water out of its leaves, and when it does that, it creates a negative tension. It creates a pull on the roots essentially, and the water gets pulled up into the roots as water transpires and evaporates off the leaf and through the leaf. And it's that suction that pulls the water in. That doesn't happen when the plant's not growing. So if in order to get the nutrients in the plant, there has to be water being moved through the plant. That's basic plant physiology. So if there's no transpiration, there's no active growth, there's no transpiration, there's no water movement, there's no nutrient uptake. So you're just wasting money and unnecessarily creating more risk than you need to, and probably giving the industry a bad name. I mean, putting us behind the 8 ball. So we're all in the same boat together. You have to remember, we're all in the same boat, and the last thing we need is somebody in the bottom of the boat shooting holes in it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're on this thing together. Let's work together so that the industry can prosper, and we don't need someone shooting holes in the boat.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we rowing. That's almost equivalent to rowing backwards.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's right. That's a good analogy too. That's right.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna move over to the next topic. Now that we've started fertilizing, right? We've got that. We've got our two to three mows on it. We're about ready to go grab some fertilizer and put it down. If you were walking to the shelf, whether it be the shelf, the online shelf, or your local big box or your ag store, if Doc is going to the shelf to get some fertilizer, what's he grabbing? And why? And why?
Okay. Well, for me, now keep in mind, I grew turf and maintained turf in Oklahoma, where, believe it or not, some of the soils there are quite poor. In Florida, where the Florida soils are generally extremely high in phosphorus but low in potassium. And now in Kentucky, where, I mean, anybody could grow a plant in Kentucky soils. I mean, you don't have to be, PhD to grow a plant in Kentucky soils. I mean, so
that's why Polo does. That's why Polo yard looks so good. It don't take no effort.
Well, so, I've grown plants in various soils, is what I'm saying, and some of them quite fertile, some of them not fertile. So if I'm going to the store, and this isn't a knock on any big box stores. I go to big box stores for other things, but I don't go there for fertilizer because it's so dang expensive. I go to the farm store, or I go to the local co-op store here in town. It's Southern States Co-op. I go to that Southern States, or go to, I go to some place where it's inexpensive. And it is, I mean, I can't remember the last time I bought something that had something other than nitrogen in it. I'm sure it's happened at some point in my life. But if I'm looking, I'm looking straight at ammonium sulfate, or I'm looking at 4600. There is some 2000, which is, you have to keep careful with this 2000 that you see at like some of the big box stores. Some of that can be ammonium sulfate, but a lot of times it's just urea that's been diluted down with filler to 20%. And sometimes the 3400 is the same thing. Sometimes it's urea that's been diluted down with filler to make it, I think it's to make it look like the consumers are buying ammonium nitrate, because the old ammonium nitrate is 3400.
3400, yep.
Yeah, so they think they're buying ammonium nitrate, which is an extremely good nitrogen source. Believe me, it's very, very good.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get nowadays. So I think some blenders kind of got the idea, we'll dilute the urea down to 3400, and people think it's 3400 urea or ammonium nitrate. I don't know if that's why they did it, but I'm looking at one of those. I'm looking at 4600 or 2100 or 2000, something with just nitrogen. And that pretty much goes that was the same thing in Florida. I didn't have any potassium in my soils, or I had a high phosphorus, but I didn't have very fertile soils in Florida either. And I still just used straight nitrogen. Oklahoma the same way.
You grew you had 419 in you had 419 in Florida
back then. Yeah, I was in my early 30s. Let's see, I was in my early 30s when I had that. Yeah, I was early 30s, mid 30s, and I was a little bit more energetic back then. So I was cutting with the 1600 and doing all the stuff that you'd want to do to keep it nice and clean and super tight. And but even then, I was just applying straight urea. And I worked for a fertilizer company. I could get any fertilizer I wanted on the earth for free, and I still just put out straight urea. But I mean, I don't want to say that, and everybody just goes, "Okay, that's it. I'm never applying anything else." Because the reality is, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, these are all these old Ultisol soils that are extremely infertile soils. Okay, basically the entire southern belt of Oklahoma, of the United States, essentially the entire state of Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi are all Ultisols, and they tend to be very, very poor fertile soils. So I'm not going to sit here and say that you shouldn't ever apply anything else, but that should be where you start. And just, if it were me, I would just stay with that until you have a good reason to include a phosphorus or a potassium. And if you have a good reason, then so be it. No problem with that. I just want people to make decisions based upon good reasons.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like one of the things, if I'm going to the shelf, especially, one of the things I tell a lot of people is, don't go to the big box store to buy fertilizer. The only time I go to the big box store to buy fertilizer is when the bag is busted and I get it for about 15, 20
bucks. Yeah, whatever. Whatever it is. Yeah. That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Or those in the season sales that y'all was finding that I couldn't find nowhere near
Oh
me.
yeah, $6
$6 bag of the
$6
2100.
$40
I
bag
was
of
mad.
AMS. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
which is
mad. I couldn't
interesting
find
that you
that.
said that 2000, because that's what that bag is. Just they market it as a 20.5, 20.500, and then they eventually went to 2100. So
Oh, they
it
did.
may or may not be in the same boat as what you just described.
Yeah, you have to just look at the derived from. I mean, the
Yeah,
analysis doesn't tell you what it's made. Well, if it's 4600, then obviously it's urea because
yeah,
it's the
it's
only
urea.
4600 that exists. But anything short of 4600 could be. Well, no, that doesn't exist either. So the point is, look at the derived from statement on the bag. That'll tell you what you're buying. The analysis just helps you understand the rate that you need to apply it at to get the pounds that you need. But the derived from is where you make your money. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
ammonium sulfate's great. And so if that 2000
Yeah.
or the 20, if it's 2100, whatever it is now, or if it's not urea and it is ammonium sulfate, fine, no problem. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
if it is urea and they're just diluting it down with limestone, the wise consumer would go, wait a second, I'm just buying
I
diluted
could just
urea.
go
I'm
buy.
paying
I
more
could just go
for it.
buy. Yeah, I could just go buy urea and be
Yeah.
good and get more
Yeah,
bang for your buck.
You get more. You probably buy a bag of urea for the same price you buy a bag of 2000 if it's been diluted. I mean, I don't know how they
Yeah.
mark it up, but I mean,
Nah,
the point
it's
is,
actually the derived from is ammonium sulfate that's in
okay.
there.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And this, you can go even regular price. I think it's $25 regular price
Yeah.
for a 40-pound bag. It's the cheapest big box store fertilizer you're gonna go buy.
Okay.
But of course, you can go to your local co-op and buy a 50-pound bag of AMS for cheaper than that. Which is what I tell people: either go to your local co-ops or your ag store or something like that, or find your local nursery, a local nursery, not necessarily saying a big corporate nursery or something like that. Find your local nurseries and turf supply. Typically, they've got AMS and urea in there that you can go buy it a lot cheaper than what you can get out of like a lot of the big box store fertilizers.
Yeah, and any fertilizer you're going to get from a farm store, it's not always the exact same quality of material that you might get from a turf store, but on coarse textured grasses like tall fescue, like St. Augustine grass, some of these not quite so dense, coarse textured turf grasses, you're not going to see any difference between that and a turf fertilizer. Now, if you're going to cut it at 750 with a PGR on it, and you've got
Right.
Kentucky bluegrass or Bermuda or something like that, then you might not want to go get a farm grade, urea.
Yeah.
There's probably some value in the more uniform particle sizes and the smaller, more consistent particle sizes. But any typical home lawn that's a coarse textured turf, I mean, the stuff that I get from the farm store is perfectly fine. Now I have tall fescue and it is open canopy, and it's not dense.
Yeah.
It's not growing together like a creeping grass would. But I just want to say I wouldn't want people to be fearful that I'm going to get a farm grade fertilizer. You are going to get a farm grade fertilizer. You're just not going to see any difference in the turf between that and another fertilizer, so long as it's not super dense and tight turf grass. Like for example, some of the lawns that I've seen on my channel, on your lawns too, that's pretty tight. If you're putting PGRs on your lawn, that's probably pretty tight grass, and that might not be the farm grade fertilizers might be a little bit inferior to some of the higher priced turf fertilizers in that particular instance. Okay, so just
Not once you melt them down, because that's what I'm
keep
doing.
melting down. Yeah, melt it down.
Right, so
That's what I do.
I'm gonna take that farm grade and I'm gonna melt it down. I'm putting in my boom sprayer and I'm going out and I'm spraying.
Yeah.
Because that's the best margins. So,
Yeah.
But no, really good point on the Prill side for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the things also that we talk about is that prill size and getting that uniformity. If you've got that tight turf, if you're low cut, something like that, a lot of times those bigger prills, you will see a difference if you're super low cut and tight like that. So
yeah, and that's where liquids really start to pay for themselves pretty quick in that case, because especially if you're putting slow release fertilizers on it, like if you're cutting at 500 and it's tight. You got PGRs on there, and you're putting on like a 240 SGN or higher slow release, and you're going to cut it with a reel mower.
You're probably going to
You're
cut the
just
prill.
Yeah, you're just nicking all those prills up,
Yeah.
and there's some clear evidence to support that. So that's where foliars come into play, and that can be a lot of value in those settings. But you've moved beyond like a normal average lawn to a real serious lawn connoisseur. I mean, they're really interested in their lawn qualities at that point, and
especially if once you get sub an inch for sure. A lot of times when you get sub 2 inch, you've stepped into a whole different ball game at that standpoint.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
So from a value perspective, if you're looking at some of the other fertilizers that, say you've got some of your polymer coated type fertilizers, and then you've got your just straight urea and AMS. Like if you were to compare those three, bang for your buck, what's the benefits of going with one of those over the other when it comes to a cost? Are you going to get from the polymer coated? So are you going to get more feeding time out of it, or than you would for like just your ureas or AMS, or what from a value perspective? What is it between those three?
Okay, so let me be clear though. Between urea, ammonium sulfate, and polymer coat,
like say polymer coat, like a polymer coated urea.
So, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to have to unfortunately ask you which polymer coat you're talking about. I don't mean which brand,
sulfur coat.
But like, okay, so sulfur coat. So if it's sulfur coat, again, I'm going to have to ask you talking about XCU or the old sulfur coat, because those are two different. Like XCU is typical.
XCU is typically what you can get nowadays. So I'd say XCU.
Okay, so XCU, urea, ammonium sulfate, and XCU. You want to know the value of these in terms of turf response and cost? Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
Okay. Well, let me just break the value and the benefit of all three down individually. So first of all, the benefit of urea is by far the least expensive nitrogen source. There's no question. It's almost impossible to beat urea on a cost per pound of N basis or a cost per day of response basis. It's virtually impossible. So the benefit of urea is you're going to get a good response, a predictable response, and it's going to not cost that much. The disadvantage of urea is it has a relatively high volatility index. Its potential for volatilization could exceed 10 or 20%. But or in addition to that, what I feel is the major disadvantage to just urea is on low sulfate soils. If your sulfate in your soil is less than about 10 parts per million Mehlich 3 at 6 inches, then you are extremely high risk of sulfate deficiency, and you will know that when you apply urea and you don't see anything happen, and that does happen. It does happen. In fact, I don't have it queued up, but I do have a photo that I use on my presentations where people think it's fake. I mean, no, it's just as yellow grass as you can possibly see with a green square in the middle. And all of the grass, yellow and green, got fertilized with urea. The only difference is the green square got also fertilized with potassium sulfate. So the point is, urea has the advantages of low cost, high predictability, good response, but it can volatilize, and it's essentially useless on low sulfate soils. Okay. The benefit of ammonium sulfate is it provides sulfate. So you don't ever have to do a sulfate sulfur test if you're using ammonium sulfate. You'll never be deficient in sulfate.
It comes with it.
Comes with it. There's two other advantages to ammonium sulfate. One is on higher pH soils, let's just say 7.5. If you use ammonium sulfate as your nitrogen source regularly, over time, you can gradually lower that pH down. If the pH is inhibiting your turf quality or whatever the case is because of pH being high, then it'll gradually lower that down, and you don't need to do anything extra to it. You don't need to add any sulfur to it. The third advantage, which is a little bit... I wouldn't hang a whole lot of weight on this, but there is an advantage to using ammonium compared to nitrate on turf grasses. So if the turf had its choice, it would prefer to take up ammonium because it costs less energy to metabolize ammonium than it does nitrate. But because ammonium oxidizes so rapidly to nitrate in soils, we're talking days or hours, not weeks or months. It oxidizes so rapidly that the plant just has access to more nitrate. But if it had a choice, it would rather take up ammonium. And in cases where we've actually controlled for that transformation from ammonium to nitrate, you will see superior turfgrass in many cases that is only supplied with ammonium compared to turfgrass that is only supplied with nitrogen. So there's several advantages to ammonium sulfate, from the ammonium being reduction in pH and ammonium source, and from the sulfate providing a known macronutrient that is known to be deficient in some cases. The disadvantage to ammonium sulfate is it has extremely high burn potential. It can volatilize quite rapidly, especially on high pH soils. And so those are the two major disadvantages. It's a little bit more expensive than urea, but it's not crazy high. I think it's like another 10 or 20% more expensive than urea on a cost per day of response basis. So I wouldn't be using ammonium sulfate if you don't know what you're doing and you're going to go out in the morning and you have dew on the grass and you're not going to water it in.
Yeah.
That's a perfect situation for burn and volatilization to occur on your plant. It's usually not going to kill it. It's usually going to grow back in a week or two, but it's going to tip burn your grass like crazy. So ammonium sulfate is like handing someone who's never fired a weapon a gun and saying, "Here, go use it." I'm like, well, hold on. I got to know where's the safety. Where's the dangerous end of this thing?
Yeah.
It's very useful for what it's useful for, but you need to know what you're doing with ammonium sulfate. With urea, it's like a little bit less concerning in that particular regard. Anything with ammonium sulfate and urea before I go to polymer or sulfur coat?
You're right on it. Right on it.
So with sulfur coat, particularly with XCU. Okay, this is manufactured, used to be manufactured by Agrim. I don't know who manufactures it now. Maybe it's Coke. I don't know who manufactures it. But there's a couple advantages to XCU that is really good. One, its uniformity is so good. It's an extremely uniform, small particle, even compared to many polymer coats. It's not 240 or greater. It's probably somewhere around 200 or 190. It's very small, relative. Well, not very small. It's not a micro, but it's small and very consistent, very uniform. It's a really good, fun product to mix with. It's really consistent in getting the fertilizer out. It's a really good product. So that there's an advantage in that regard. The turf response is very predictable. You are going to greatly reduce the burn potential using sulfur-coated urea, particularly XCU, relative to ammonium sulfate. You still have burn potential. There's no question with XCU, but it is lower than with ammonium sulfate. Okay, so the advantage is it's very uniform, very predictable, and you have a lower burn potential. The disadvantages is it's a little more expensive than both the urea and ammonium sulfate. Not crazy, but it's still in the ballpark. It's not like going to a natural organic where you're going to 6x the cost or something, but it is a little bit more expensive than urea and ammonium sulfate. So that's how I break it down. The least expensive is urea, followed by ammonium sulfate, followed by XCU. The burn potential is the least using XCU, then urea, and then ammonium sulfate's the greatest in terms of burn potential. So they're all good products. Most of my fertilizer blends that I work with my clients on when they counsel with me on Calendly, one way or the other, we usually end up with some sort of derivation of those three products, depending on that particular person's expectations and their logistical restraints of whatever they can and can't do. So yeah, those are all three really good products. I would lean on those heavily if I was just an average LCO person wanting to get out a good blend. I got people that have irrigation. I have people that don't have irrigation. I don't want to burn the lawns, and all these things. There's a lot of things you can do with those three products that you can get out across a wide variation of different clients that will still provide a very good turf grass.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Last question. Duration, before we jump into the questions that we've got in the chat, duration of turf grass response.
Okay. I didn't
between those.
Yeah, we did a study on that a couple of years ago in South Florida and repeated it in North Florida, and we included all those on there. And what will happen a lot of times is the marketing sheets will come back and say, we have a 45-day polymer coat, or we have a 90-day polymer coat, or XCU is going to last 60 days, or whatever the case is. And they're basing that off of what's typically a lab dissolution study or lab, they'll put it in a glass on a table in a lab, and they'll measure the time that it takes to move out at a given temperature. And they'll say, okay, at this time, it took 45 days for like 50 of it to be released out or whatever. But I don't really care about that. That's really not the argument. That's a straw man argument, really. They're arguing something that's not my argument. My argument is, what is the turf response to that fertilizer going to look like? Because if you're going to say that polymer coat lasts 90 days, because we've done it and we show that the longevity lasts 90 days, then by that definition, urea lasts 1. And everybody here knows urea, the turf response to urea doesn't last 1 day. So if you think about it in that regard, we want to know what the turf response is. And when we've done that, what happens is it ends up being about the same at either 1 pound or 2 pounds of nitrogen. And it's like, well, how in the heck can you apply 2 pounds of N from polymer coat or XCU and get about the same longevity as 2 pounds of N from urea? How can that happen? Well, when you apply the urea, I'm talking Bermuda grass here now, okay? So it's roughly the same for cool season grasses, but it could vary. When you apply urea or ammonium sulfate to turf, the time between application and initial response is only a matter of days, especially at 2 pounds of N, which I wouldn't recommend doing that. We did this for research to see exactly what's going on, but you're talking days. If you apply it on a Monday, you're going to start seeing a response maybe by Wednesday or Thursday. It doesn't take long to start seeing the grass turn green when you're applying soluble N at that rate. Well, the polymer coat might take 2 weeks. When you're applying that, it might take a long time depending on the time of year, especially in the spring when it's still cold, the soils are still cold. It might take a while for that to start to release. So the soluble materials end up getting a head start. Well, on the back end, the turf response does indeed start to come down from these soluble materials, and the turf response from the slow release materials might kind of hang on for a little bit, right? It might kind of hang on at the end a little bit longer than the soluble materials. But when you look at it all together over the seasons, whether it's the spring, summer, and fall, it ends up being about the same length.
Yeah.
So because the soluble materials get a head start of a week or two, and the slow release gets a longevity of an additional week or two at the end. Because the turf response to urea and ammonium sulfate is not 1 day. It's not 1 week at 1 pound or 2 pounds in. It's several weeks. It's 4 or 5 or 6 weeks of response from these soluble materials. So having said all that, that would be my take on the longevity of turf response. It ends up being about the same for the 1 pound rate. Now, the polymer coats, you can greatly exceed that, and you can show a difference between the soluble and the polymer coats, but you got to get way out there with the polymer coats. You got to get out like 7-8 months of release. And at that point, then you're like, okay, now the urea's clearly dropped off.
Yeah. You're not going to get,
I got to reapply urea again and then again. But people aren't generally doing that. They're doing that in nursery production and things like that, but not on home lawns. So I'm not saying it's impossible for these slurry materials to be superior to soluble. They can be superior, but not generally based upon the way we typically apply them to home lawns or to golf course fairways or to saw producers. We don't generally apply them with a thick enough coating to last 7 or 8 months at the right rate at the right time. So I'm just saying, I just want to sort of contextualize that. They end up being about the same at 1 or 2 pounds of N. It's possible for the slow release materials to be better, but not based upon the way we're doing it now.
Yep. Yeah. I just wanted to get that one out there because I think that's an argument that gets made often when it comes to using like a lot of the soluble N sources and comparing them to like some of the slow release stuff. So we're going to jump in here, Turf. I think you had been looking at some of the questions. Kind of drive me to where we need some of the questions we need to tackle.
Yeah, so our first question, you're gonna have to scroll back up, is from a T Lupus 63. He said they're coming off of an overseed in the fall. Should I fertilize a tad more than traditionally in the spring? If you're still here, I'm sure we would all like to know what's your grass type, but I think we can give you some general feedback on that. What's your thoughts, Cam?
So help me understand the question. Oh, here it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So
on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think what he's saying, and I'm going to assume it's a cool season grass because he just overseeded. And I think what he or she is asking, like, should I push it harder? And in in the spring, and my general consensus is going to be no. That's baby grass still, doesn't have a full season on it, and spring is dicey depending on your region. But last time me and Cam was together, we talked about people going out guns blazing in the spring, and you're dealing with like humid, hot, warm. I mean, you're just asking to increase your pressure for some type of disease, and if that grass is just half of a season old, I wouldn't recommend. I just would stick with the BMPs, like the doc was saying earlier. Best management practice, just feed it like normal. Cut the crap out of it. That's what I would do. That's what I would aggressively mow it and make sure that you're watering it adequately, meaning not too much, not too little. It's very easy to overdo it, especially in the spring. So I don't know if has anything.
I say the mowing piece is the more important part. Just as I say with any overseeding, like I'm typically, my recommendation for when to start mowing is way earlier than what most people say, because I've just experienced the benefits of mowing. Like, get out there, get it cut, get it mowed, get on it, get off of it. And it's not pushing it with a whole bunch of fertilizer, especially in the spring. You're going to have that. If we're talking cool season lawn, you're going to have that spring flush. Like, so you're going to have that benefit already. The best thing you can do is mow it and just feed it normal. Like, feed it normal, keep it fed. It's going to be growing. So just keep it fed and mow it and water it.
I use you guys have probably seen a pyramid that I use, a pyramid of risk and soil and fertility and all that's important. But I think it's the least important it's the lowest priority. The higher priority is injury, and mowing is the most injurious process that we do on a lawn. So to get it mowed, to keep your blade sharp, to keep it conditioned at that height of cut, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of many other scholars, is vastly more important than trying to throw a bunch of fertilizer on it. There's very little you're going to do that's more damaging and simultaneously have a bigger impact on the quality of your lawn than mowing correctly.
Yeah. Yep. Agree.
There you go. There you go. Jude Baker, you already got it. Boom. Yep. I like this question. I'm going to give the doc. I want to see what he says about it first.
Okay.
You want me to read it for you?
Go ahead and read it.
Here's my question, because my YouTube algorithm is filled with channels promoting natural lawns. Do repeated synthetic fertilizer applications degrade soil microbial diversity compared to organics? This is a clippable. Get your clips ready. It's a clippable moment, because this is a point of contention with a lot of people out there, especially in the gardening world. Oh my gosh, I deal with it so much.
The idea that that it's degrading the soil or something, the quality of the soil.
Yes, absolutely. That's what they tell you. It's poison. You're poisoning the soil.
Oh, they do. They say, oh, okay. Well, well, we can say a lot of things, but you're going to have to back it up with some evidence. So this came up on my channel a while back, where a viewer said, well, I think you're wrong. Go read this article. And that's actually the response I would prefer. Like, if you're going to say I'm wrong, who cares? But if you're going to show me a scientific article to provide some evidence, then okay, let's talk. It just so happened that the gentleman cited an article that was refuted by the author's own colleagues. And the article is basically saying that synthetic fertilizer is reducing organic matter and reducing microbial activity and doing all these harmful long-term effects to soils. And what the authors were saying was this: they did a review of the literature and saying this review is showing this. And then the authors of the papers that this author reviewed wrote a letter to the editor and said, no. You're using our data wrong. You're not doing this correctly. Okay. Our data didn't show that at all. And this is coming from the Rothamsted location over in England. It's been a continuous research center for over 100 years. And it didn't show that at all. So the gist of it is, I can't say it won't happen. I don't think any scientist can prove a negative. But what we will say is the evidence that we're aware of so far indicates that any influence that synthetic nitrogen is having on the soil is equivalent to the influence any natural organic fertilizer is having on soil in terms of soil degradation or a reduction in carbon or reduction in microbial activity or whatever the case is. There's no long-term harmful effect that we have yet been able to document. So that's my take on that question. I don't think it's happening. I don't have any good reason to believe any harmful effect is happening. If somebody knows of evidence or knows of a good reason for me to believe that, then I'm all ears. You can send it to me and I'll be happy to talk about it. But the best of my knowledge, there's very, very scant evidence to show that, and there's stronger evidence to indicate that it doesn't happen. So you can fertilize with synthetic fertilizer. Anything within reason. I mean, enough water will kill you. I mean, you can't be, so anything within reason. So within reason, within BMPs, there's really no good reason to be concerned about any long-term harm that you're causing to the soil using urea or ammonium sulfate or any other synthetic nitrogen source.
Yeah. I agree with you on that one. Like we get that one. We get that one often. And I think this was the first time that we've been able to have you on to have a lot of the data behind it. And I know you've covered a number of articles on your channel, kind of around the synthetics versus the organics and the claims that the organics, how they're superior to the synthetics and things like that.
I think that comes from ignorant people who don't know the science, don't know how the system works. So the way the system works is let's just use turfgrass because that's what we're about. Turfgrass is probably the world's most efficient machine at pumping carbon into the soil, besides microbes. Okay, but all it does is take carbon out of the air in the form of carbon dioxide, convert it into carbohydrates. That gets used in a number of metabolic processes, and then it gets exuded from the roots into the soil. It just pumps carbon into the soil, and the microbes will feed off of that carbon. So the microbial communities oftentimes flourish in the presence of healthy growing turfgrass. So when you're applying synthetic nitrogen, you're pushing the gas pedal and you're growing and growing more turfgrass, and you're pumping more and more carbon into the soil. When you're doing that with natural organics, you're probably doing the exact same thing. The only difference is one's coming from a natural organic nitrogen source, and the one's coming from urea. And by the way, urea is an organic nitrogen source. It contains carbon as well. So this,
but does
I
the
don't
plant,
think people understand the system.
But does the plant know any difference?
The plant knows the difference between ammonium and nitrate, but it doesn't know any difference from where that ammonium and nitrate came from. So the urea is going to be broken down into ammonium and nitrate. Now I'm talking normal arable soils. I'm not talking some desert in the middle of freaking Chile somewhere where there's no turf. Normal arable turf soils. That urea is going to be broken down into ammonium within a matter of a couple of days. That ammonium is going to be converted over to nitrate within a matter of a couple of days. So if you apply it as urea, that's what's going to happen. And if you apply it as ammonium, that's what's going to happen. It's going to convert to nitrate. If you apply it as nitrate, it's going to stay as nitrate and get taken out. If you apply it as a natural organic, so let's say chicken litter or something, that chicken litter is going to come in the form of a number of nitrogen-containing organic compounds like amino acids and proteins. Those amino acids and proteins in the soil, for the most part, are not going to be useful to the plant. I know there's some incidental uptake of amino acids and stuff from the root. There's a little bit of that. But those amino acids and proteins are going to be broken down by microbes into what? Ammonium and nitrate. So it's eventually going to get converted over anyway. And that's going to happen fairly rapidly. So once it gets converted into ammonium and nitrate, it didn't matter whether it came from urea or synthetic source or whether it came from a natural organic source. I think if I were to steel man the natural organic argument, the strongest argument I could think of would be if you were somehow growing turf in a virgin soil with somehow such low microbial diversity or activity that it needed some help priming the system a little bit. Maybe it needed a little bit of catalyst to kind of get the soil kind of going. And that's going to happen anyway. But if you wanted to reduce that time down a little bit, there may be a little bit of an advantage to using copious amounts of natural organic fertilizers. There may be a little bit early on, the first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, to maybe help prime the system. Maybe I'm trying to steel man their argument. It's not easy, But when you do that, you have to keep in mind.
They're being very generous.
Yeah, I am. Well, I'm about to hammer them right here. So when I'm just being frank. When you do that, you are going to greatly increase the environmental risk of phosphorus in your soil. You're going to send the phosphorus through the roof with virtually any natural organic. And if you do that with municipal biosolids, you run a great risk of PFAS contamination. And you don't want to be responsible for applying a bunch of PFAS to your
forever chemicals.
Properties, the forever chemicals. Yeah. So that's a big issue right now in the American Society of Agronomies, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of work on that through Journal of Environmental Quality puts out a lot of work on that. So the point is, every fertilizer has its place. The place for natural organics, in my opinion, would be on low phosphorus soils that the turfgrass is showing phosphorus deficiencies, and those fertilizers are applied based upon the phosphorus rate, not the nitrogen rate. In that situation, let's take Milorganite, for example. In that situation, Milorganite is a great product to use if you have low phosphorus soils and you're showing a phosphorus deficiency in the turfgrass. But you don't want to apply it to the pounds of nitrogen. You want to apply it to about a half a pound of P. So you would do the same thing you would normally do as nitrogen, but you would use a half a pound based upon the percentage of P. And that would essentially eliminate all your phosphorus concern for a year or two. I mean, it'd be there for a while. So I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying there needs to be a very good reason to use those natural organics. And to me, it's phosphorus deficiencies.
Not for the planet.
You're not going to not for saving the planet. You're probably causing a lot more problems than you're solving by applying natural organics. People over apply them. They don't realize they're applying all the phosphorus. They don't realize with municipal biosolids they're applying PFAS. They don't realize the challenges. So, have a good reason. And just because it's natural is an appeal to nature, and that is not a good reason.
I think for layman terms, my biggest takeaway from what you just said was healthy turf will, because the roots and their symbiotic relationship with organic material and the diversity in your soil, microbes in your soil, if the turf is healthy and you're feeding it, doesn't matter what you're feeding it, that's going to increase the diversity that you're looking for. Is that a fair summary?
Oh, easily. That's been shown many papers, Rob. Many papers have shown that the presence of actively grown turfgrass, the presence of healthy turfgrass, the microbial diversity, and if you want to call it soil health, I don't like that phrase, but if you want to call it soil health, usually is very, very high and equal to many other cropping systems, because we don't till turfgrass, we don't cultivate turfgrass. It's a perennial cover crop is what it is. So it ends up being a very useful part of our ecosystem if managed properly. Yes.
Yep. Gotcha. And it continues to build what it needs in the soil. Right? You just grow it, get something growing on it. Get something growing on it.
One of the worst things you can do for the ecosystem is leave soil bare, fallow. Yeah. It's
get something growing in it.
Yeah, get something growing and get some roots in the ground, and do so under big BMPs, and you can rest assured that you have extremely low risk of any harm happening to the environment, and you're probably actually resulting in a benefit to the environment when it comes to things like erosion and dust and all these other things, and habitats for more earthworms and moles and all sorts of stuff that likes growing where turfgrass grows. So
you can keep those moles.
Yeah, I don't like them either. I'm trying to get rid of them.
Well, they're bringing me a lot of money right now. People trying to get rid of moles left and right. And you got to be as persistent as those moles. That's all I'll tell you. That's my number one tip. You have to be as persistent and relentless as they are in order to get rid of them.
I know. Jeez, I think I'm growing a mole farm in my backyard. I don't know what I did, but I can sell those things.
Good luck with that. You got healthy turf. That's the problem. You're putting too much synthetic fertilizer out there, Doc.
Maybe. What else you guys got? These questions from the chat?
Yep. Next one up here.
You see the Padoka one?
Yeah. Was this one? I think this was the next one.
Okay.
Overall, he's adequate in P and K. He thinks grass genetics optimized. He's looking for a strategy to get through the high temps through the
Okay.
summer. He's located
So
in
what?
Chicago with
Hmm,
cool season grass in
probably
Chicago.
bluegrass. Yeah, probably Kentucky bluegrass. So it's not. Yeah, I don't envy you up there in Kentucky with Kentucky bluegrass and heat in Chicago. If you have tall fescue, I know a lot of people are converting over to tall fescue for this very reason because it is much more heat tolerant than Kentucky bluegrass. I get it; it doesn't look as good as Kentucky bluegrass, but whatever. So my answer is going to be a little bit lackluster, and that is, to me, the best approach to drought avoidance and even drought tolerance is going into those seasons with healthy turf. Don't try to solve the problem once you're in it when it comes to drought, because the solution to drought avoidance is usually deep roots, healthy turf grass above ground, and then that'd be avoiding drought. And then tolerance to the drought when you're in it is also a function of the health of the plant going in. So yeah, you can add a little bit more water, you can add a little bit of wetting aging, do all these other things, but really you're putting Band-Aid on a severed arm, and you want to make sure you don't cut that arm off to begin with. So the way you do that is to kind of get the grass at the right height of cut, get it healthy
Hmm.
growing in, get it as healthy as you can get it so that it is as healthy as possible when those stressful periods come around. When you're in it, there really is no magic cure to surviving stress. It's certainly not from potassium. You're not going to apply potassium and help solve that unless you're indeed potassium deficient. But that'd be the case with any nutrient. If you're indeed phosphorus deficient, it would help. All these things would help if you're indeed deficient. But you're not going to somehow hyperinflate the stress tolerance of the turf by adding more and more potassium. You're probably causing more problems than anything else. But that'd be my answer to that. I would be aware. I can tell you right now in Kentucky, it's going to be dry as a bone at the end of July and going into August. It's the same way every year. It's not going to rain. So my counsel to people is, well, it's going to happen. So let's start now. Be consistent with the mowing, be consistent with the watering and the nutrition, get it growing in good and healthy. And then when that time comes, there is no silver bullet, but you're going to be as healthy as you possibly can going in, and you're going to reduce the amount of time coming out of it by being
That's that
prepared
fourth quarter,
for
baby.
That
That
it.
fourth quarter. You're prepping for the fourth quarter. Cam says it.
Yeah.
He says it all the time. Your whole prep is for the worst time
Yeah.
Yep.
of the.
I would. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Prep for the worst time. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But I would also maybe add to that. Now that I'm thinking about it, during that same time of the year, at least here, I have tall fescue, and of course you're gonna have different diseases on Kentucky bluegrass. But during the same time of year, or actually, unfortunately, just prior to the drought season in Kentucky, is when we have disease season creep up. So the last thing I need is to have my lawn be disease ridden
Weak.
going into drought
Yeah.
season. So there may be some, at least good reason, pragmatically at least, to make sure that you're not getting hit with disease. Last year, we just got hammered here with disease in June, in early July, just got hammered. Well, the tall fescue lawns. Well, I didn't, because I had a fungicide down. My lawn looked great. So I would be aware of that. What was his name? Jude Baker. I'd be aware of that you're nice and healthy going into June in Chicago. I don't know when the diseases creep up in Chicago, but be aware that you're going to have some diseases come in, and it's probably going to be right before your drought. So maybe take care of any other abiotic or biotic stresses that you can predict that are going to occur that would increase your chances of surviving that stressful period of drought, like
Mhm.
diseases.
Yep. And speaking of diseases, one of the questions was, how do I forever eradicate dollar spot in my Kentucky bluegrass?
Oh yeah, it's not gonna happen.
It's not going to be a forever thing. It's a seasonal.
Yeah.
Every time the conditions get right, year after year, like it just is what it is.
I would
I
look
think
at
that
it
was
as like, go ahead.
I think that was somewhat of a sarcastic one, but
Yeah. I would just look at it as things that we're trying to move the needle more in our favor. We're just trying to keep the needle in the green zone here. Sometimes it might be a little bit more for dollar spot. It might mean a little bit more nitrogen, might be a little bit less, mowing, or maybe, less water. There's all sorts of things we can do, fidget with irrigation, but we're just trying to kind of keep the needle moving in our favor a little bit.
Yeah.
But what we're
too,
not going to do is we're not going to go out and throw a bunch of Daconil on there, right? I know some other people that do that. That's illegal. You can't do that on home lawns.
But then too, it also varies every season. Like every season is different.
Yeah.
Like it for the most part is pretty similar. But then you get those variations in rainfall and when things happen and how long the drought lasts and stuff like that. So we're always dealing with the environment. So it'll be some variation in there.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's an excellent point, Ken, because last year here it was disease on tall fescue. Crazy. 2 years before that, it was fall armyworms just wiped out practically half the freaking lawns in Lexington. So there was very little disease. So it's just the environmental conditions shift one way or the other, and the organism, whether it's a worm or whether it's a fungi or whatever, the organism just happens to be there, and all of a sudden now this year is going to be bill bugs, or then next year it's going to be. So there's always sort of, the environment we're trying to figure out and play with. So yeah, you bring up a good point. It could be, who knows what it's going to be this year. If you could predict that and tell me now what's going to happen in June, then let me know.
Let me know.
That'd be great for my turf programs.
Let me know.
You got a crystal ball we can look in. That'd be beautiful, man.
Oh, I want to answer this question from Joe Calla.
Okay.
See, well, go to, we'll keep asking questions, but I want to get to this one about phosphorus and potassium from Joe.
Okay.
All right.
But just ask whatever questions you got in line. Go ahead.
I see it.
All right.
Yeah.
Turf, you got that one pinned?
It's towards the end.
Okay. All right.
It's towards the bottom. Yeah.
There's another one from Ironite too in here. There's some good questions. Let's get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, some good questions.
Managing St. Augustine during the nitrogen ban in the summer months. How do they manage St. Augustine through the nitrogen ban? I know you've been down there in Florida.
Yeah, they just finished a study in Fort Lauderdale.
You put humic down. That's what you put humic down and micronutrients.
Yeah. So compaction cure.
Yeah. No, that's not it, Doc. I've been led to believe that's what it is.
You guys know me too well. You guys know me too well.
We need to get some penetration in the soil, humic, and then a lot of micronutrients and potassium, lots of potassium, right?
Yeah, that'll solve the whole problem. Yeah. Well, they did a study in Fort Lauderdale. They just finished it. They're trying to get it published now. And I listened to that study in Utah. I guess it was a couple months ago. Basically, what they found on there, they're looking at these blackouts and trying to apply fertilizer before, try to apply fertilizer after. And what they're finding is, of course, the blackouts are at the worst time of year. You should be doing them in January and December, and not in June and July, which whatever. But we're not going to change that. The situation in Florida is a quagmire ran by emotions and not science, and it is what it is. So now we're stuck with it. Usually it's June, July, August, and September. So you can't apply anytime after May, and you can only apply on October 1 and thereafter, which is, again, the worst time. And what they're doing now is they're showing that indeed that is the worst time, because nobody fertilizes those months. And then what happens in October 1? Everybody goes out there and just hammers it, and they end up putting out more nitrogen than they should. And then we find that it actually does move through the soil under those conditions. High amounts of nitrogen on sand and high rainfall. That's what you don't want, and that's what the ban is resulting in end users doing, putting out high amounts of nitrogen in October. Well, the turfgrass in St. Augustine grass, it grows all year there, but it is slowing down in October, especially in North Florida, in Duval County or in Alachua County, whatever. It's slowing way down. In South Florida, it's not stopping, but it is still slowing. You don't want to do that. You don't want to go out and throw out a bunch of in when the turf's slowing down. What I'm saying is a lot of in. You can still apply some, but not what's happening. What's happening is they're going out and doubling the nitrogen. I mean, they're applying more nitrogen because they haven't had any nitrogen all June, July, August, and September. It drives me nuts.
I got to make up for it.
Yeah, you got to make up for it. Exactly. That's the human nature. Well, so what do we do? So the question is, what do we do? How do we manage this? So if you're in a location, which I don't know where you're at does he say North Florida? No, he doesn't say North Florida. I don't know where he's at, but depending on where you're at, sir, Mr. Martini. If you're in North Florida, it's going to be slightly different than South Florida in terms of the rates. But you'll need to have, in this particular case, there can be some advantage to going out with a little bit of nitrogen in May, even if it's a little slow release, because if you're using slow release, you can apply more than 0.7 pounds of nitrogen in the slow release form in Florida. You can only apply 0.7 pounds of soluble in at one time in Florida. That's the law. But if you have slow release, I think that the law says you can go up to 2 pounds. So here is a non-agricultural reason to use slow release. You could actually apply more of it, right? So whereas you're limited to 0.7 if you don't. So I would do that in May, and then you're going to have to wait until October 1, and then October 1 do the same thing again. You can go out with nitrogen October 1. In the meantime, there is no form of granular iron that you're ever going to get a hold of anyway for any reasonable cost that you can do. A lot of the recommendations are to apply iron for color. You can only do that in a foliar form. So iron for color doesn't exist in a granular form. So don't do that, Mr. Martini. Don't apply granular iron. You're going to stain everything, and you're going to hate life because now you got to clean up all those stains. But you can spray it out. So you can get a soluble iron sulfate, soluble iron glucoheptanate, or iron citrate, or iron EDVHA, or DTA. You can get all sorts of soluble iron sources and spray that out in your lawn. It's not going to change the growth rate of the turf hardly at all, but it will maintain a little bit of a deeper color. Okay? Short of that, I don't know of any other strategy that's going to get you through that blackout period in the summertime. So nitrogen in May, foliar iron June, July, August, and September, and then nitrogen again in October is about as good as you're going to do at the moment.
XCUs.
XCU would work.
XCUs would be your friends. There was a second portion to,
and I think you just addressed the ironite question on that one. On that one too.
Where was that?
with the grain, trying to get the granular, putting out some ironite on there. I think somebody said something about getting your take on the ironite.
Because there is an ironite, usually 100, but sometimes it's 000 or 00 whatever. There's so they say, well, I'm going to put out ironite during the summer because it has low N or no N, and I have a blackout. The issue with that is, most of the iron in ironite is literal. Look at the bag. Go look. You can pull it up. It'll say iron oxide, or it'll say magnetic rock. It's unbelievable. So it is a form of iron that is never going to be soluble in our lifetimes or our grandkids' lifetime. Never going to happen. Okay. There are forms of iron in ironite that are soluble, like iron sulfate, and sometimes there's iron EDTA. There are those forms in there. The issue with those is, and this is the reason I want to do this demonstration on my channel so I can start showing people this, iron sulfate oxidizes within about 10 to 15 minutes, meaning that it went from a soluble form to an insoluble form of iron within about 10 or 15 minutes of hitting the soil. So that's gone. You're not going to see a response from granular iron sulfate. Iron EDTA, you certainly can see a response to iron EDTA. I've shown that. But the rate is about 200 times higher than the rate that exists in many of these fertilizers. We're talking 40 to 80 pounds of iron per acre. And in those fertilizers, you're talking about 0.1 or 0.2 pounds of iron. It's very, very, very low rates of iron from EDTA. So the point is, there's no good reason to apply ironite for the iron. There's maybe other forms of sulfate, and maybe if there's a manganese deficiency, there might be something else. And I don't know what else is in there, depending on whatever you get. But the iron in ironite is not going to result in a turfgrass response. Or I should say, there's no good reason to believe that it will. Okay.
Right. There you go.
What else was there? That was a good question. See, Joe also knows me. So you guys are asking, you're scratching my itch on all these things.
Yep, that's exactly.
Before you jump into... Joe, let me because Jude, he had a follow-up question. I really don't want you to find yourself in a pinch. And he said right below that, he said, I heard PGRs can potentially help. And this is the one who was concerned about keeping it green during the stress periods. I'm going to tell you personally, especially a cool season lawn, and I know Cam does this too, we bring our lawns off regulation when we're creeping into danger zone, into that fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. Mainly because if you catch a disease or something goes wrong, it's going to take forever for it to recover. So that's probably actually the opposite of what you want to do. Now, you can build up good turf density up until that period, which will put you on this platform where, Doc is talking about going into that season with the healthiest turf. But typically with us, me, Polo, Cam, if we're dealing with a cool season yard, we're going to let it come out of regulation and glide its way through the most stressful periods of time. You do not want to have that PGR locked in going into that time period, because whatever damage you incur, it's going to be there and it's going to be loud and ugly for a very long time. So you actually put your yard at a disadvantage for its recoverability. So,
yep,
that's it. I just wanted to get at that because I don't want you to be out there saying that we do it. We done made those mistakes for you. We've made the mistakes for you. I promise you.
I've been there. I had my joint shut down one year going through that period, and I was like, I will never do that again.
Yeah,
at all.
Puts you in a tight spot.
Yeah, nah.
So okay. Well, you had the other one up.
I think we were almost.
Like
I think we're right at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to read that?
Here's some of the arguments against N-only apps is that the turf needs P and K and will eventually deplete out. How long would it potentially take for adequate P and K levels to deplete?
Well, that's. I wish I could give you a slam dunk answer, but Joe, that's just going to depend. It's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to do that, especially if you're returning the clippings. If you're returning the clippings, you're never really ever going to get there in your lifetime. I mean, if you're, I guess if you're in a high sand, high rainfall, low retention, with potassium, I suppose it's possible you could maybe find some potassium deficiencies if you really do some silly stuff with your irrigation or leach it through and grow it for long enough and mow it for long enough. I suppose you probably could, but it's pretty unlikely, especially with phosphorus. You're not going to grow it into a deficiency normally. I mean, I'm sure somebody can give me an example where that might occur, but you're talking 95% of the cases. If you have adequate P and K in your soils and you're returning the clippings, you're probably never going to grow it into a deficiency in P and K. You're A-okay. Now, if you're removing the clippings, then that's another issue. If you're right on the line, like let's say you're at 10 parts per million Malic 3 phosphorus and you're on sand or something, you're in a soil that doesn't have any phosphorus inherent in the parent material itself, right? And you're not applying phosphorus and you're removing the clippings. I mean, in that situation, I suppose you could eventually grow it into a phosphorus deficiency, but it would still take some time. These things, the soils are generally pretty heavily buffered, meaning that there's adequate reserve supply of phosphorus and potassium in normal soils. But again, sands, you could make a case for sands potentially causing an issue, but I wouldn't get overly concerned about it unless you're in high sand soils. If you don't see any phosphorus or potassium deficiency in your turfgrass, then I just wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, I would just move on. We tried to do that in Florida, and even in Florida with high sand. Of course, the Florida soils are high in phosphorus already, but we tried to leach the phosphorus out of some field soils years ago because we were doing a field study with phosphorus. Well, we couldn't do a field study with phosphorus if we're not seeing a phosphorus deficiency. So we tried to leach it through with DI water for like a year, trying to leach this phosphorus through and trying to deplete the soil for phosphorus. And finally, we just gave up after like a year. We were harvesting the tissue and leaching it through with DI water. I'm like, all right, enough. We can't do it. It's not possible. So, but that's in a high phosphorus soil.
Which is one of the reasons why I tend to stay up on top of my mowing and just return the clippings. Stay on top of your mowing, return the clippings back. And I don't know what it was, but for some reason I posted a reel of me removing the leaves in the fall from the lawn. And my goodness, I guess I stirred up all the natural, the natural
you're
organic
your phosphorus.
the natural organic people, boy, they came after me. Oh, really? you need to be mulching your leaves back in. This nutrients, you're throwing away nutrients, you're throwing away this. Little do you know, I return my clippings all growing season. Like I return clippings all growing season. That little bit of nutrients that is in those leaves are not going to move the needle against having a set management plan, fertilization throughout the season, and on top of all the clippings and stuff that I've returned throughout the entire growing season.
Yeah.
Those
what kind of
leaves
tree is it?
I've got a couple willow oaks, couple of white oaks, mostly oaks, and I think I got a black cherry.
Okay, well, it's not so much of the cherry, but the other ones are oak trees, and those are shade trees. In other words, like there's in my lawn in the fall, I used to have a neighbor that used to have a big catalpa tree, and those leaves are like freaking the size of your head,
huge.
huge. And I mean, you got to remove them. The lawn will be dead. I mean, when they fall in the fall, literally, it's just like complete. There's no light getting to that plant, and I have a video somewhere where I took the leaf off, and the grass is just yellow. It's dying underneath it. So there is a fine balance, I guess. What I'm saying, I would prefer not to pick them up just because I don't want to go out there and pick them up. Okay, but when there's so many,
Cam don't like that leaf litter.
I don't like the leaf litter.
He doesn't like the look.
I don't like the leaf litter in my canopy.
It drives him crazy. That's why he blows it off. And you can do that. That's fine.
And there's a period in the season where even if I wanted to mulch them, I couldn't mulch like there when it's at peak fall, like when it is the leaves are falling at its highest. I'm literally getting like my lawn is literally covered within a day and a half, 2 days. It is back to complete. Like by the time I get when I'm out there blowing it, by the time I get to the other side of the yard, the side that I started on looks like I did nothing. Or like I'm like, what am I out here for? Like, what am I here for? So, and that's the argument. Like, it's just too many. Like, you can't mulch that amount of leaves back into the lawn and still have a healthy condition for the turf. Like and then too, I just don't like it. So it doesn't really.
It sounds
matter
like we're very similar. Yeah. It sounds like good, but I just have too many leaves as well. So I can't. I have a robot mower, so I can't even mulch them. I don't have a mulching mower, but even if I did, it's just too many. I mean, it's just so many leaves. You got to remove chunks of them. At least whatever's left, maybe I can mulch that. But there's just so many, I can't keep up.
Yeah. All right, I think we're almost at the last one. I think we got one. I think we've covered everything.
I know Evan popped in.
Yep, which was question. The one.
Yeah, which that actually circles to a different question someone had. They want to know what Doc felt about the Phoenix anyway. So I guess that's a 2-in-1.
Yeah, I don't know what Phoenix is, so I can't help you with that.
That's our fertilizer, Doc. We made it for
what's in it?
We made it for it's a 25010.
Okay.
25010. 10% ammoniacal nitrogen, 12% urea nitrogen, 3% nitrate nitrogen. And then we have a soluble potash in there at the 10%, 9% of combined sulfur. And then we have a water soluble iron in there that is derived from ferrous sulfate monohydrate. So that's the essential. And then we have a 15% biochar, real biochar too, not that fake weird stuff that they're selling today. So, yeah.
So we're gonna be 100% transparent with y'all. We're gonna get Doc's review right here.
Do you have a label somewhere though? I mean, I don't want to give you. I don't even know what.
I mean, hold on. Let me send you. I'm gonna send you the link. I'm gonna send you the link in our chat so you can pull it up. How about that?
I was gonna say that's what I was over here.
Yeah, there you go.
If you already got it.
Yeah, I already got it queued up. Good.
Okay.
I saw it 10 minutes ago, so I went ahead and I pulled it up and queued it up.
Okay, I got it now. I got it.
You take a
label.
look at that,
okay, here we go.
You know, if you think it's trash, tell us it's trash.
Urea, potassium chloride, ferrous sulfate, urea ammonium nitrate solution. So this urea ammonium nitrate solution, and this is a granular 120 SGN.
Homogeneous.
So they're spraying that. Oh, it's homogeneous. It's being. I see. It's being. Oh, I see. Yeah. So these are all probably powders that are re-aggregated, rehomogenized into homogeneous granules, and then spread out like that. So when water hits them, they disperse immediately. But essentially,
exactly.
Yeah.
For more or less.
Well, if I'm going to still man yours, if you want me to still man your product here, And you know me, I'm neurodiverse, and I have no friends for a reason. Okay, so I want to keep you as friends. Okay, my interest in keeping you as friends exceeds my interest in critiquing something.
No, we're all good because we've been asked this before. Like we've been asked this, and
we've actually mentioned you in videos like, yo, send it to Doc, let him tell him to look at it, see what he thinks. You know, if he airs us out, he airs us out. But there was in developing the product, we know that there were buzzwords and things that people look for in the product. So we purposely put those things in the product. I'm not going to say what because I don't want to skew your review, but just review it and tell us what you think.
Okay. Well, one, so just so we're all on the same page here, I'm not being facetious. I am far more interested in maintaining our friendship than critiquing this fertilizer. Okay, the man in the middle here is my hero. You don't understand what this man did for a living. And by the way, Rob, you haven't even told the audience what's going on in your life after 20 years, and he's coming up real soon.
They've heard it a couple times, but yeah, I'm about to retire, fellas.
Yeah, he's happy about that one, and we're happy for him.
We're gonna sit this one out.
Well, 20 years in the military, and you're just turning 40. I don't care if you're washing bumpers or if you're got a firearm on your hand. I mean, thank you, and that's the reason you're one of my heroes. I mean, and it's silly what I'm doing compared to what you did for a living. I mean, it's a joke what I did. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I don't even want to ask Cam because I know what the answer is going to be. But whatever it is that you do, okay. Thank you for doing what you do, whatever it is. Okay. So having said that, do you really want to know my opinion? Because I will give you my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. My opinion of this is,
nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. One, let's talk about the biochar first. Biochar, I'm not an expert in biochar. And this just came up the other day on my show. Depending on how it's made, it can be very useful or extremely harmful. I'm not an expert in biochar, so I can't really tell you or any of your clientele, your customers, that this would be useful or would be harmful. Because I don't know. I don't know how it was made. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know. But what I can say is it can be very useful in terms of water retention and nutrient retention. There's no question. Or it can be very harmful in terms of pesticide retention. There's some types of biochar that can actually reduce the efficacy of certain pesticides, and depending on how it's made. And I don't know how it was made. So I don't know. What I would say is I'm neutral on biochar because I don't know in this particular case. So let's mark that out as I don't know. Okay. The urea ammonium nitrate solution, I suspect whoever made that probably needed to include something like that in there to kind of get it aggregated. Other than just water, he probably just added some water to kind of get it aggregated together to make it a granule. And he's able to add in a little urea ammonium nitrate and doing that as well to make it a product, to make it a usable product is what I'm getting at. Urea ammonium nitrate solution is okay with me. I don't have any problem with it. I don't know if there's enough in that blend to do much other than maybe a physical requirement for the end product. You know what I'm saying? So that's fine with me. The ammonium sulfate, we talked about that. That's okay. Urea is okay with me. Potassium chloride is also okay with me. I oftentimes will refer people to potassium sulfate, but simultaneously I'll tell them the difference between potassium chloride and potassium sulfate. People talk about the burn. Oh, but potassium sulfate has much less burn potential, much less burn than potassium chloride. This is true. But when have you ever seen a comparison side by side where potassium chloride and potassium sulfate, and potassium sulfate was always the winner? But outside of a sulfur deficiency, I'm talking about burn. In other words, potassium chloride, if you have a potassium deficiency, it's fine on most turf grasses. It's perfectly fine. Okay. If you have a sulfate deficiency, then you need to err on the side of potassium sulfate. Does that make sense? Because but you already have ammonium sulfate in this blend, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay. So what I'm getting at is potassium chloride is the least expensive between potassium sulfate and potassium chloride. Potassium chloride is the least expensive, so that keeps the cost down. Okay. You add in potassium sulfate, it lowers the burn, but it increases the cost. It also might increase some chemistry issues on this particular. When you start homogenizing things together, that takes a little bit of science and a little bit of art. So there's a lot of things that get added to these types of blends that I would argue are agronomically unnecessary, but they might be logistically necessary. Does that make sense? And I don't know.
Yes. They even told us that there's nitrogen. He was like, literally, I put this in here because because of the science that I needed to be able to hold everything together. So everything that you're saying is mimicking what our manufacturer said to us.
Oh, well, good. Perfect. Yeah. Well, like I said, I was in the fertilizer business for a while, but I've been out for like 10 years. So,
nope, you're tracking.
Okay.
Tracking.
So still manning this, I would say that if you have a low potassium soils or potassium deficiency, or if you don't even know if you have a potassium deficiency, you haven't done a soil test, you don't even know, this would supply adequate potassium, and you don't even have to take a soil test. Don't even worry about whatever your soil test is, because if you do have a potassium deficiency, which I doubt, but if you do, this would resolve it.
You inspired that, by the way.
Oh, I did.
Tenfold.
Yeah.
Tenfold. Yeah. Tenfold.
We're returning the favor for you on that one. Yes.
Yeah. What are you talking about? How did I do that?
Well, when you were talking about your rate of nitrogen to potassium and that balance that you needed, just like a safe set stand. I don't know if it was on a live with us or if we went back and watched one of your videos. We were like, look, we want to make sure that ratio is right, kind of what Doc was saying. Something that is safe for all general lawns, but also makes sense for the uptake through the plant as well. So that's exactly why that sits like that.
So with basically any higher K than that is really going to be a waste. Like there's you're not going to see any
there's really no
need.
You're not going to. Let's assume for a second the turfgrass was deficient in potassium, and you came to me and said, my tissue looks deficient, my soil test shows I'm deficient. I'm going to go, okay, you have a good reason. Apply 25-0-10. It's going to solve it. I mean, about half the rate of nitrogen. So you put out this blend that's say 3/4 of a pound in or a pound in, whatever. If you have a potassium deficiency, it's going to solve it. So my argument is, then why even bother with the soil test? Because if you did have the potassium deficiency, it's going to solve it anyway. So who cares, right? So I would say that. So the one thing that I would say agronomically, I'm not speaking logistically in the blend, okay? But agronomically, I don't see much value including iron. Agronomically speaking, there's probably not going to be a whole lot happening to the turfgrass from that source, because it is iron sulfate monohydrate, which monohydrate is not that common in fertilizers. So I again suspect it might have been added from the blender with the knowledge that it needs to be that particular product to aggregate together in the homogenization process. I don't know. But I don't usually run into monohydrate. It's usually heptahydrate or just straight up ferrous sulfate or ferric sulfate or just ferrous sulfate. So I don't know about that particular monohydrate, but it's unlikely that the turfgrass would respond favorably to the iron. So the only thing I would say is about how it could be improved would be, I doubt you'd see much benefit to the iron. It might be able to be improved if you remove that and maybe add in some manganese sulfate, because manganese sulfate as a granular has been documented to result in a turf response in low manganese turf grasses. So whereas iron sulfate granular has never been shown to result, I take that back, there is one known case, but it's almost never been shown to show a response. Manganese sulfate probably won't, but I can tell you that there is evidence to support the inclusion of manganese sulfate, not only for manganese deficiencies, but there is a very sort of peripheral, weak argument, but nevertheless valid argument to include manganese for things such as take-all root rot reduction. The risk of take-all root rot is greatly reduced in the presence of manganese being elevated to about 30 parts per million or so. So that's the only way I would probably, if I were to critique it, I'd say that you might enhance it a little bit by that consideration. And if you have potassium concerns, this would solve it. And the nitrogen, it's fine. Yeah. As far as, I mean, for the average person who might not know what the potassium is, might not care what the potassium is, that might be in, say, Georgia or Alabama or Mississippi or even South Carolina or Florida, where potassium can, although rare, it can be low and can be a concern, then this would resolve that. You wouldn't even have to worry about it.
I think we're
There you
still
got
friends.
it. There you go. You got it from Doc. There it is.
I don't want to be
You
friends.
know about
I
it?
could
He
give two
said,
flips about this fertilizer. I care about you guys is what I care about.
I think we're still friends.
Yeah.
But no,
he
that
said, where's
was
the boron? Y'all are trolling. He said, where's the boron?
See, the problem with me though is that because I'm neurodiverse, and then my wife finally, after 20 years, recognizes this too. She goes, "Don't ask you a question unless you want to know your opinion, because I'm not going to. I have a difficulty reading the room. I have difficulty understanding social etiquette, and I don't always. I'm saying things thinking that, oh, this is going. They want to hear this because this is going to help them. Meanwhile, I just told them their baby's ugly, and it's hard for me to. I can't pick up on those.
Can't help that.
So I don't. I understand that it's a problem for me. I'm trying to work on it, and all I'm saying is that, yeah, if it were bad, I would have told you it was bad. The only thing I can think of is maybe manganese rather than iron, but other than that, it's fine.
And
I wrote that note down.
We've talked and we've talked to the community about it, and we've said it, like that iron was one of those things that we had a debate
in the back.
We had an internal debate on whether or not that iron was going in the bag or not. So we had that same discussion about the iron. It wasn't whether we could use the magnesium in there, but it was just overall knowing where the iron was and the other items that we had in the bag, how much value was it really going to provide? And then one of the things that we did talk with our manufacturer is it is an aid in the manufacturing. It does.
Oh, it does.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah. It does.
You might not be able to take that out. Yeah, you might not be able to take that out.
That biochar is I wouldn't get biochar from any other source. Period. Okay. This person knows biochar frontwards and backwards.
Yeah, like I said, it could be very, very good. I mean, or not. I don't know. There's just so many moving pieces with biochar. It's hard to say this will work or this won't work. I mean, it's hard to say that. Did I say manganese or did I say magnesium? I meant to say manganese.
You
not magnesium.
I wrote down.
I thought you said manganese.
Yeah, I wrote down manganese.
Manganese, M-A-N-G-A-N. Okay, manganese. Okay, all right. So magnesium is not going to do a whole lot. Manganese. I don't think manganese is going to do a whole lot. But if you said, Travis, I get it, but there is this particular situation where it's useful. I'm like, okay, you have a good reason. All I'm asking for people to do on my channel, in my last 20 years of my career here that I'm coming into, I just want people to start thinking critically about why they're doing what they're doing. And set aside the ego and the stubbornness because I've always done it this way, because I did it and it worked, so I'm going to keep doing it. Set that aside for just a second, and let's think about this critically, and then ask ourselves, well, step by step, which one of these do we need? Which one of these do we have evidence to support its inclusion? That's all I'm asking. And although I might not necessarily apply manganese sulfate, you may have a good reason to do so. I'm just asking for people to think about that. Do you have a good reason? What is it? And if you do, then so be it. Go for it. But there is no but. I'm just saying that's what I'm hoping to get people to do. And I make mistakes. You guys make mistakes. But if we can work within the boundaries of critical thinking and rationale and separate out the big conglomeration of homogeneous, all this fertilizer, NPK and iron, manganese and magnesium sulfate and all this stuff, and look at each one individually, we find that there are good reasons to include some of these, and there's good reasons to exclude others. So that's all I'm asking people to do. Just try to use some critical thinking to walk your way through these processes before you start jumping on and throwing liquid aeration out everywhere and thinking that it's doing something.
Do we answer Evan's question? I don't think we answered this question.
What is this?
Did we? Because we just started talking about Phoenix. I mean, I don't think we actually answered this question.
It was urea the gospel for me. We talked for 20 minutes. Didn't even talk into his question. My plan this year is to apply Phoenix as my granular and spoon-feeding urea and ammonium sulfate in between granular abs. Cool season pH 5.3 is urea the gospel for me. I don't know really what his means is, but yeah, urea is fine. I don't know what he means by gospel for you. Maybe because of the low pH. He's
Yeah, I
concerned
think it's
about that.
because of the low pH.
the low
He's
pH,
considering
Yeah.
not or staying away from the AMS side of it.
Well, if at 5.3, I would start thinking about that as a risk, particularly on heavier soils that might have high aluminum and iron in them. You're not going to be iron aluminum toxic at that pH, but you certainly wouldn't want to continue to move it downward. You get down in the low 4s, you could start having problems. But at 5.3, I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. I wouldn't start losing sleep about it. If your turf grass looks fine, then your turf grass looks fine at that pH. But I wouldn't intentionally continue to acidify it. I would just go straight urea or I mean, I guess you could use calcium nitrate or something like that, but I wouldn't intentionally continue to pound it with ammonium sulfate if you see that go from 5.3 and all of a sudden next year it's 4.5.
Yeah, that can is expensive though. So, yeah, we thought about that mix as well. So
we did too.
We thought about a lot of stuff. Phoenix is pretty much sold out, by the way, y'all. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
we
should probably say that.
Yeah, we should probably say that. I think there's like a couple bags left, and then that's it until we get our next run in. We should have more available here soon. So yeah, Phoenix is. Thank you.
That's
selling out.
I was gonna say
Phoenix
thank you
before the season started.
first run, and that's kind of what we were hoping for. We were hoping for that we'd be able to get the first run done this spring season, and thanks to y'all for the support and being able to do that. And y'all right here live tonight got the review from the doc of the label and the status of it. So I think we had a couple other questions in here that were we'll take one last question, one last one, and we're gonna get the doc out of here. I think this one may be interesting for Doc to take. I think I know where he's going to go with it.
He was going to go to that one.
I knew he was going to go to that
Just to kick the can on the way out.
We're keeping stuff stirred up, so we might as well just keep it going. So thoughts on humic acid and amino acids inputs for a cool season.
Yeah, I'll do that, and then I'll answer the last question from Evan. So after this, my wife's going to kill me if I answer any more questions. So after Evan's question, then I'll have to cut it.
Gotcha.
So my thoughts on humic acid and amino acids are the same as my thoughts for any other product. There's really no difference at all. So the question is there any good reason to include them? Is there any evidence to support their inclusion? With humic acids and amino acids, it's pretty scant. So I'm not going to say it wouldn't ever happen. You see some sort of benefit from humic acid. Amino acids obviously have nitrogen in them. Wouldn't say you're not going to see any benefit from that. The question, that's sort of the wrong question. The question is, whatever benefit you're going to get from humic acid and amino acid, which, it's fine. You're going to see something certainly from amino acids at least. That response is going to cost you something, whatever you want to call it $1, okay? And you got a response that was, 20% greater than whatever you were on. Well, the cost for urea isn't $1. If amino acids and humic acids is $1, amino acids and humic is $1. Urea wasn't $1. It's probably 50 cents compared to these two products. So the question becomes, how much does the response actually cost you? And then what source can you achieve the least cost to achieve the response? So if you're seeing a 20% increase from amino acids and humic acids, then just add a 10 or 20% more urea, and you probably see the same response for less money. That's my take on it. But more importantly, is there any good reason? And I'm not saying there's not a good reason. I'm saying use good reasons, Mitch, because the advertising said it worked is a bad reason. Because 10 people down the street said they use it and it works is not a good reason. Because it couldn't be creating this thing and selling it if it didn't work, that's not a good reason. The good reason is there any evidence to show that these products are actually resulting in a superior turf grass than a standard nitrogen source, being ammonium sulfate or urea or whatever the case is? And if there is, then there is. But then the next question is, how much does it cost? Okay, that's the key. What does it cost to produce the turf? That's what it comes down to. And it's going to be really hard to beat urea. I'm not saying it can't be done, but ammonium sulfate can beat urea when there's a sulfate deficient soil. That's a good reason. So you just have a good reason, okay? I wouldn't spend my money on humic acids and amino acids, but I don't have high expectations on my lawn. And if you do, and you have a good reason to include it, then I would do that. But I would want to know what that good reason is. I haven't heard one yet. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have not heard a good reason to include humic acids or amino acids from a cost perspective. A cost and turfgrass response perspective. I haven't seen one yet, but maybe you have one. Maybe there is one out there. I haven't seen it. So put Evans up there, and then I'll knock this out of the park, and then we'll hit the road. So do you want to read it, guys?
Thank you all. I've been told that AMS produces a darker color in the leaf tissue in comparison to urea. Was curious as to whether or not which spray grade in-source made a difference.
The answer to that question is it absolutely can, and very likely will be more common to occur as we move forward. Let me explain this real quick. The greener response occurring from ammonium sulfate compared to urea is a function of a couple of things, but I'm just going to, I can't go into all of them. So I'll talk about the highest priority one first. The most likely cause as to why this is occurring or why you see this. The most likely culprit behind this is that turfgrass has been deprived of sulfate sulfur since the 1990 Clean Air Act passed in the Clinton administration, where we started cleaning up the emissions from the air. And now you'll see back then the rainfall was depositing around about a half a pound of sulfate sulfur per year. Okay, that was half a pound, that 1 pound per thousand, 20, I'm doing the conversion, 24 kilograms per hectare. So it'd be a half a pound per thousand per year being deposited as sulfate sulfur. Now it is essentially zero.
Yeah.
So now we have essentially no sulfate sulfur being deposited at all. And the soils are just now the plants are just now showing deficiencies in sulfur. This is happening in corn, it's happening in tobacco, it's happening in turfgrass. So in this situation, even though your particular turfgrass might not be showing a deep or a bright yellow color, like I've shown extreme examples of on my channel, it may still be sort of a incipient sign of sulfate deficiency. You may still be in that zone where a little bit extra sulfur might actually impart a darker green turf. The reason it imparts a darker green turf is because in sulfate deficient situations, the turfgrass cannot metabolize the nitrogen because there's cysteine and methionine, which are two sulfur-containing amino acids that are required to convert the nitrogen into proteins. If you don't have those two amino acids, cysteine and methionine, the nitrogen just sits there as non-protein nitrogen in the plant. Suddenly you apply sulfate, those amino acids that are required for metabolization suddenly get synthesized, and now all that non-protein nitrogen gets converted over into protein, and the turf turns a dark green color. It's probably more information than you wanted to know, but
nope, no, it's not.
So that's the reason why. That's the reason why. So there is some issues with pH, there is some issues with ammonium, but primarily, in my opinion, it's a result of providing two macronutrients, nitrogen in the form of ammonium and sulfur in the form of sulfate, whereas urea only applies nitrogen as urea that it gets converted over to ammonium. So that would be my position for now on that. I think I have a pretty good argument as to why that occurs. So if you take a sulfate sulfur test, Malic 3 sulfur, and your sulfur is like, the number needs to be in double digits, but let's say it's like 9 or 10. That's marginal. You're probably not going to see a response. But the turfgrass during certain times of the year, you see the stresses come in due to the fall or due to the spring or due to heat or whatever, those times of the year, that magic number of 8 or 9 parts per million sulfate sulfur, it might change. You might need a little bit more during those stressful times of the year. And it's those things that we don't have a lot of information on. So what I'm getting at is when you can apply ammonium sulfate correctly and safely, and your pH isn't 4 or 5, you don't worry about the pH dropping or whatever, then ammonium sulfate can be a superior nitrogen source to urea. Okay. Now, before I get divorced, I'm going to have
like
to,
that, and just like that, we're out of here. Again, Dr. Shaddox, so we definitely appreciate the time. We said we was going to keep it to an hour, and we blew past that for another hour.
We had some good questions.
So yeah, we definitely appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on and joining us. And again, you are welcome anytime you want to come back. And we're all good here. So
Okay. Well, before we
anything you
go,
want to close
you guys
out?
are welcome to come.
Yep.
Yeah, you
Anything
guys
you
are
want to
welcome on
close
my
out
show
with?
sometime. We'll arrange that on my show. Before we leave, I want to make sure absolutely correct. Cam, I feel bad because I don't know what you do. I appreciate what you do. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to say to everybody, Rob, thank you.
He supports me. Cam supports me.
Let me just say my piece. Okay. I'm looking at you, Rob. I'm looking at you too, Cam, but because you're kind of, tight to the chest on your information, I can't say too, I don't know. Rob, thank you for what you do. You literally are one of my heroes. I can't thank you enough for your service to my country. What I do is a joke compared to what you do. And so I just wanted to say it on the record. I admire you and thank you very much for what you do.
Thanks, Doc. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So again, this is Dr. Shaddox. You can go over, if you like the information that you saw tonight, he's got a lot more of the information that he was talking about right here over on his channel, Turfgrass Epistemology. Slide on over there, hit that subscribe button, let them know that we sent you over there, and pretty sure you can find a lot more of the information that you got here. So appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all again next week, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, and we will check y'all later. All right.
Good night.
Peace
Good
out.
night.